New Jersey.
I hereby reconvene the open session board meetings. Joyce, would you please take roll call?
Roll call. Board Member Adams.
Not connected.
Board Member Doshi.
Board Member Fulton.
Here.
Board Member Reeves.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Morocco. Board Member Rasmussen.
Board Member Wilton.
Here.
Board Member Rajmani. Chair Gutierrez-Cachetti.
Here.
Thank you.
May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the February 12, 2020 board meetings?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Joyce, would you please take roll?
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams. Board Member Rajmani.
Board Member voting on the minutes.
Yes. Board Member Doshi. Board Member Fulton.
Yes.
Board Member Morocco.
Yes.
Board Member Wilton. Board Member Adams.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Gutierrez-Cachetti.
Yes. Joyce, is there any way we can turn the volume?
Motion
on the
carried.
speaker?
Yes, they're doing that right now in the back room.
Okay, thank you. Before we continue with the CEO's monthly report, I have asked to move item 200-17 up in the agenda to make that motion now. And that is the matter that is the tenancy dispute of Russell Grady and the Atlantic City Souvenir and Snacks, Inc. Before we can move that item, though, we need to ask if there's any public comment on that particular item before we move it. Is there public comment in the audience? I know two signed up.
Mr. Grady.
Yes.
Errol Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make my comment very brief this evening. This is a special evening for us. As you know, we have been coming down here for the past 3+ years, and we have been coming regarding this particular issue. So this evening, that issue being on the agenda for some resolution makes us very pleased this evening. I know that we have made argument in support of this issue. Sometimes the arguments that we make may have been a little bit on the edge. But let me assure you that nothing that we have said in the past is personal. It's just that it was the heat of the battle, and sometimes some of these things do come out. So I want to assure the board that we respect what you have done, we respect the process, and for sure you can tell that we do respect the process because we've been coming down here for 3 long years. I just want to use this opportunity, Madam President, to just thank all the other folks who have come to this mic every month that we have been here and expressed support for Mr. Grady. We want to thank you, and we do appreciate all that you have done to bring us to this point of resolution tonight. So in closing, I just want to, last thing to the board, please go ahead, don't have any hesitation to approve that resolution. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Grady.
For the first time in my life, I get up to a mic and I don't know what to say. Well, it has been a long time coming. For some of you, it started 3 years ago. But for me, it started 2004. It's been a long journey. started out with some bad decisions that were made by this agency. I don't know why. I'm not going to stand here and try to pretend I know exactly why, but there's bad decisions. Because there was wrong decisions that was made against me. But coming out of the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King, and some of you might know that I spent some time with him just a few days before he was assassinated in Patterson. I know when you're right, you're going to fight for fairness, you're going to fight for justice. Now, I invested a lot into this situation because I knew I was right. There were some decisions made against me. That wasn't fair, that wasn't right. But I fought back. I guess tonight is going to be a night where I think those folk who also believe in fairness and justice that has been coming down here for the last few years with these orange shirts. Strange how I reached the point of just the orange shirts because most of the people that I engaged in this situation disappointed me. And I said, let me take a few people who believe in justice and believe in fairness, and we fight for right. And I believe right always win out if you stick with it long enough. I want to thank these folks. Give a hand, except a hand clap. I want to thank you for supporting this idea. I want to thank this board for taking the time to go back and investigate and find out what really had happened. And we reached this point tonight where I had to be frank. I'm not totally satisfied because I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't even get what I deserved. But I got something that's tangible, and I want to thank you for it. I really want to thank you for it. I'm going to retire these orange shirts for this issue. But I did learn something along the way. But if you stick to what's right, it is powerful. Stay with it. It is powerful. I won't come down here again with an orange shirt talking about New Jersey Transit and Mr. G and that kind of thing. But one thing I learned, and one thing you helped me create was a justice group, Mr. G's justice group. This group is going to stay together. And we will be fighting for things when we find that they're wrong. So we might be down here these orange shirts again, not for this issue, but for others, where we think New Jersey Transit haven't been just for some of its action. So with this, I'm going to sign off. I appreciate you so much, believe me. And as Mr. Carr said, there's no bitterness here. There's absolutely no bitterness here. Because what I think we did, a legacy that we could leave, that if you fight long enough for fairness and justice win out. And I want to thank you again.
Having no other speakers,
May I address this issue, Commissioner?
yes, you may, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm David Peter Allen, A-L-A-N. I live and practice law in South Orange. I am making a personal statement. I was going to address this issue during my regular statement, which will come later, but I am absolutely delighted that you people were willing to reach a settlement with Mr. G. Since I first found out about Mr. G's case 3 years ago from Steve Thorpe, my colleague, at ScatterTAC, the Senior Citizens and Disabled Residents Transportation Advisory Committee, I have become a supporter of Mr. G and a customer at his diner. And I know from practicing law for 39 years, and I don't do litigation anymore, possibly a lot for the reason I'm about to mention. A lot of what I had heard before were offers that what we call in my profession nuisance value. Well, I don't know the number, and the number's not my concern, but I did see in today's literature that it will be above $500,000. And that kind of number in a dispute like this is more than nuisance value. And I think that's the right thing to do. I know that in a settlement, neither side gets what they want, but both sides get something they can live with. I'm glad this dispute is finally being resolved, and I am especially glad that Mr. G has lived to see it. I wish Mr. G well, I wish all of you well, and I hope that now all of us can move on to the main business that everybody in this room shares, and that's having better transit for everybody in this state, whether we are motorists or we depend on the transit that you give us. Thank you.
Thank you. Having no other registered comment for this particular matter, I would ask Bill Vacara to present for us item 2003-17.
Thank you. We are recommending approval of item 2003-17, tenancy dispute of Russell Grady and Atlantic City Souvenir and Snacks, Inc. Authorization is requested to settle the tenancy dispute of Russell Grady and Atlantic City Souvenir and Snacks, Inc. at an amount discussed in executive session. New Jersey Transit has approved the proposed settlement, subject to the availability of funds. We ask for your approval of item 2003-17.
May I have a motion to approve board item 200-17?
My pleasure to move 2003-17.
And may I have a second?
Second?
And is there any discussion? Joyce, please take roll call.
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Rajmani? Yes. Board Member Doshi? Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Morocco? Yes. Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez-Cachetti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
That means, Mr. Grady, you're officially settled. Is it okay to shake hands? I'm happy for you.
I know where you are.
Congratulations.
You can't do this. All right, this is. We are. All right, so we all, girl.
Quietly,
Okay. We're going to go back to the agenda as originally cast, and at this point in time, I believe that Kevin Corbett will be making his executive director's report.
Mr. G, take care. Good evening, Chair and members of the board, and good evening to all members of the public here today. I'd first like to begin with an update on the coronavirus and the many precautions we're taking in response to the coronavirus, or the COVID-19, as many people know it. In accordance with Governor Murphy's Executive Order 102, creating a coronavirus task force, New Jersey Transit has been working with administration officials and state agencies to protect our customers and employees. We are working in close coordination regionally with the New Jersey Department of Health, the Port Authority, the MTA, SEPTA, PATH, Amtrak, and others, and nationally with USDOT, the U.S. Department of Health, and APTA. We've enhanced cleaning procedures system-wide to include disinfection regimens on board vehicles every 24 hours and at major stations and terminals on each shift throughout the day. Internally, we're following our established Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, known as the CEMP, as we refer to it, and New Jersey Transit personnel, under the leadership of our New Jersey Transit Police Department's Office of Emergency Management, are trained and prepared to handle incidents requiring cross-functional and interagency coordination. We follow the National Incident Management System, or NIMS, which is a national standard of principles and methods used in response to incidents. On February 6th, we formed an internal task force including the staff from our medical, Office of Emergency Management, environmental, safety, communications departments, and all operating lines. As part of the NIMS process, the task force is formally organized into an Incident Command Structure, or ICS, which is a standardized incident or organizational structure for the management of all incidents. Some of the section chiefs of our ICS are here today. When I call your name, please raise your hand. The incident commander is Senior Vice President and Chief Safety Officer Brian Lapp. Brian's in the back. Deputy Incident Commander is Director of Medical Services Laura Wooding. She's not here. I know she's attending another event. Meeting. And the Finance Section Chief responsible for tracking related expenses is Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer Bill Vaquera. Logistics Section Chief responsible for securing resources as needed is Chief Procurement and Support Services Jignasa Desai McCleary. The Planning Section Chief responsible for the Incident Action Plan is Senior Vice President, Chief of Police and Emergency Office of Emergency Management, Chief Chris Trissillo, in the back as well. And the Operations Section Chief with oversight of the Operations Group and the Environmental and Safety branches is Senior Director of Environmental Services, John Geithner. All of these sections are made up of several support staff members to ensure all incidents needs are met. We've also included union leadership as part of the command structure, as our union workforce is integral to our mission. This task force is meeting daily, coordinating with state and federal health officials and sharing the most up-to-date information. We've also ramped up our public messaging as well. In addition to last week's press release, we're communicating regularly and frequently on social media. We have messages on all digital assets throughout the system, and we'll have a web page launching tomorrow dedicated information on NJ Transit's responses. To be clear, health officials have said the general public is not considered at risk at this time. The immediate health risk is from coronavirus is considered low. Nevertheless, we're working to stay ahead of the situation in every possible way to ensure the health and safety of our customers and employees to keep our state moving. I'd now like to touch upon the governor's budget. As the governor's administration leads a robust response to COVID-19, it's also leading the way through unprecedented investment in New Jersey Transit. Under Governor Murphy's proposed $2.53 billion operating budget, the state would increase its investment in New Jersey Transit by $132 million, including a record total operating subsidy of nearly $600 million. Based on our progress and our results over the past 2 years, I believe this is a testament to the governor's confidence in our ability to effectively and responsibly use the state funds we've been appropriated. Additional funds will support a combination of investments focused on service enhancements that improve the customer experience. These investments include additional bus operators and service hours targeted primarily along the northern region and interstate markets to meet surging demand and to improve on-time performance, technology investments to improve customer communications, including continued enhancement of our mobile app and website, upgrading infrastructure at train stations, bus garages, bus terminals, rail yards, and parks and park and rides, and 4 additional classes of locomotive engineer trainers for our LETP program. Additional rail terminal staff across New York, Newark, and other stations, including ticket agents, platform staff, train dispatchers, and other train operation support staff. And the expansion of our police force, adding coverage throughout our transit system. Additional funds will also be allocated to new strategic investments, including our battery electric bus program, which advances the state's clean energy goals, and a new group dedicated to seeking out and executing transit-oriented development opportunities. All of these investments are critical to restoring our customer confidence and to building on the significant progress we've made over the last 2 years. Speaking of which, I'd like to touch on our rail and bus performance, as we have more progress to report on both of these departments. Year-over-year improvements continue for both. Rail on-time performance increased from 88.8% in February of 2019 to 93.2% last month, up more than 4 percentage points. Rail cancellations last month were down by nearly 50% compared to February 2019. Another noteworthy statistic on rail, only 3 cancellations in February were the results of engineer availability. Bus on-time performance last month was 95.7% overall, our highest monthly on-time bus performance since July 2010, almost 10 years. bus on-time performance to the Port Authority Bus Terminal, one of the obviously most crowded and difficult service areas. Last month was 92.7%, our best February to the PABT in the past 5 years, again, despite increasing ridership on interstate bus routes. Though we're making steady progress, we don't intend to stop until New Jersey Transit delivers a world-class transportation experience our customers deserve. I would also like to mention that I had the pleasure of delivering a similar message last week at a hearing of the U.S. House Subcommittee on Railroads, Pipelines, and Hazardous Materials entitled Funding a Robust Freight and Passenger Rail Network. This is a subcommittee of the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee chaired by U.S. Congressman Peter DeFazio. Although I was not there in my capacity as co-chair of the Northeast Corridor Commission, I was the sole representative of passenger rail systems nationwide. Many of the needs and challenges I discussed are those felt by transit systems throughout the country and will likely only increase as the U.S. population trends to its shift from rural to urban settings. More metropolitan areas are competing for transit dollars than ever before, and that trend will only continue. Along those lines, I made the case for more federal investment in transit. The fact is you can't have a first-class world economy on a third world infrastructure. New Jersey Transit is also an essential element of our region's $1.7 trillion economy, which accounts for about 10% of our entire nation's gross domestic product. Clearly, the federal government has a good reason to invest in New Jersey Transit's network to sustain and support economic vitality. I also had the privilege of updating the subcommittee members of our progress on installing positive train control. As some of you know, when I joined New Jersey Transit in February of 2018, this federally mandated project was just 12% complete towards a December 31st, 2018 interim deadline of full installation after 8 years. In 10 months, we got it done. At our October board meeting, last October board meeting, our contractor Parsons brought to attention some software issues impeding our project to full implementation of full revenue service. Today, however, those issues have been largely resolved, and best of all, last month, we received approval from the FRA to enter into revenue service demonstration, or RSD testing. This week, we begin testing PTC on trains in revenue service, that means with passengers on board in regular service, on the M&E lines. After the M&E, we will begin testing PTC on trains in revenue service throughout our entire rail network, where we are already conducting extensive field functionality tests. To be sure, meeting the December 2020 deadline will still require a monumental behind-the-scenes effort, but based on our success in 2018, the recent approval to enter into RSD, and the continued support from the FRA, Amtrak, and our other rail partners, I am confident we're going to make it. While we're advancing PTC, we're also pushing forward on a number of previous long-stalled capital projects. Last month, we received 6 bids for our largest contract to replace the Raritan River Bridge. We're currently performing a responsiveness and responsibility review of these bids, which comes within our, the bids have all come in within our original project estimate. This project, estimated at approximately $600 million overall, is scheduled to begin later this year. Our long slick project down in Hoboken also continues to progress. This project, which will modify a former barge canal next to the Hoboken terminal that many of you see off to the right if you're coming into Hoboken, is to eliminate it as a conduit for flood waters, including the construction of 3 ADA-accessible platforms to support 6 new tracks and other amenities. In October, our board awarded approximately $40 million construction contract towards this $400 million project, which includes filling of the canal. And we'll soon break ground on phase 1 of this critical system resiliency project. Last week, I was proud to stand with Governor Murphy to celebrate early construction work, estimated at $10 million, underway on another long-stalled project, the Hudson Bergen Light Rail HBLR extension, Route 440 extension. This project will extend the Hudson Bergen Light Rail West Side Avenue branch from West Side Avenue Station to a new station further west, spurring economic growth and creating an entirely new neighborhood west of Route 440. Another major project certainly is our Portal North Bridge project, which continues to advance. This project is certainly a well-known project for anyone who rides in and out of New York. Estimated $1.7 billion is in addition to the more than $1 billion in capital projects we've already committed over the past 2 years. We're now entering the engineering phase of Portal North, which is the next step towards a full funding grant agreement and getting shovels in the ground. Since our last board meeting, we've had very productive meetings with USDOT and the FTA, and have been working closely with the FTA to incorporate innovative cost-saving methods and incentives for the project. For example, should we complete the bridge replacement under budget, as we did for all our early action work, FTA may allow us to repurpose a portion of the unexpended FTA funds to advance other elements of the project integral to its success, aside from any savings we may realize for ourselves. I was also proud that in the testimony before the U.S. Senate, U.S. Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao praised the quality of the Portal North submission and our collaborative approach to getting this project finally across the finish line. I would like to point out this is a real credit to the talent and expertise of our professional staff here at New Jersey Transit. And there's yet still more good news to come, increasing Trans-Hudson capacity. Also last week, the FRA released an environmental assessment to replace the sawtooth bridges. These critical spans, which carry New Jersey Transit's busy Morris and Essex line to Hoboken, which were built in 1907 and are in urgent need of replacement and expansion, the environmental assessment puts us one step closer to increasing capacity and reliability for New Jersey Transit and Amtrak customers, and to ultimately eliminating a major bottleneck in the busiest section of the Northeast Corridor. Of course, all these developments are particularly welcome to our customers who have long been suffering from the impacts of the aging infrastructure between New Jersey and New York Penn Station. While most of the projects I've just mentioned were mainly federally funded, they were not in the context of a comprehensive capital planning process. As you know, since my arrival, we've been working hard at developing a five-year capital plan, which most major agencies have, and we will be releasing that in the spring and will provide a coherent approach to both the state of good repair and expansion projects that I believe the agency sorely needs. With that, Chair, I conclude my remarks and turn the floor back.
Thank you very much, Kevin. At this time, Joyce, are there other comments from the public on other matters?
Yes, there are 17 speakers. Speakers, in order to give everyone an opportunity to be heard, comments will be limited to 5 minutes. If there are several people speaking on the same topic, 2 speakers will have 5 minutes to provide comments, and all other speakers will have 2 minutes to provide comments. The first speaker is William Curtis.
Good evening, I'm Kurt Springstead. I'm here representing the Baltic, New Jersey Historical Society. And first, I'd like to thank this board for its support of our project. We have restored the 1890 era interlocking tower just to the north of the Waldwick Station.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
I was calling a William Curtis.
Well, my name is Curtis. You just don't have the last name correct.
Okay.
Is there William Curtis?
Okay.
Right there.
Sorry.
Board, we certainly appreciate the opportunity to come before you, and I am William Curtis. But I think I will turn the floor back over to Mr. G, because he was so impassioned, he might get a better result. What I'm here today to talk about is the proposed substation for the Bayhead Rail Yard. I am the mayor of the borough of Bayhead. Many of you don't look like you're old enough, but that train station used to be called Fishhook because it's the end of the line on the Jersey coastline. So I'm here to talk about that program where you have received federal resiliency grant money to produce. I don't know if you're aware, but I did give some copies of letters from our attorneys. We are looking for some answers from New Jersey Transit so that we can better address the issue. We're not in favor of the substation. Ideally, we'd like it to go away and be built farther north. Our line is not electrified, so we don't see the terrible need for it, especially the size. On February 13th, we had a town meeting whereby many of the New Jersey Transit people came. And let me just say this. People like Paul Wyckoff, John Del Coley, if we had had those individuals on our staff and our town from 2003 on, we wouldn't be in this situation today. And I compliment them for the effort that they have put forth to listen to our concerns and try to address them. And I know there's some massive things going on, but our requests have gone unanswered. So we really do want that. We had over 200 citizens attend that meeting. So it indicated to them, I hope, that we're serious about this. We want it done correctly. We realize that it probably would not be moved out of Bay Head, but we would like some considerations being given to what is currently proposed. When we went through the permitting process, we found many inconsistencies in that process. For one, this new building will be built partially in the wetlands. Now, they have the necessary permits from the DEP, which we take exception to. When our lake is within 500 feet of that wetlands area, it's part of the wetlands, and it is a direct feed into Barnegat Bay, which several governors, including the current one, have pledged to keep clean. So we would like another location. We also found out that in this permitting process, there were, I believe, 8 sites that were considered, and all of them, for one reason or another, were dismissed. The one that would be ideal would be an off-site location, which is several hundred yards north of us in an open lot away from residential community people. It's more of an industrial area. It's right near Route 35. It also has an electric feed that would be right there. And part of the proposal is to install 15 65 feet high telephone poles with high tension wires on it to have a redundancy feed in case electric goes out. And I get all that, but if it has to be, why can't those lines be put underground? We have gotten some answers. We're not satisfied with that, but we would like more answers to those questions. Another site would be to build it exactly on the footprint of the buildings that are there. One of those buildings is operational since the storm and provides electric power to the wayside power feed that keeps the trains warm in very cold weather. Those wires are under the tracks. So if those wires can go under the tracks, why can't other wires go underground? That was dismissed for a couple of reasons, but it would be totally out of the wetlands area and not far from where the current site is proposed. Another thing that I would like, and that's, I think your number site 6. So I would like to encourage you to look at it. I don't know if you've been made aware of our requests and times, but again, that's why I propose the letters that you have in front of you, or will be given to you. Now, what do we want? I said ideally at the beginning, we'd like the substation to be moved farther north, where the lines are electrified. Again, from Long Branch south, they're not electrified. But if that's the case, it has to be down where we are. Ideally, we would like it in that off-site location, which isn't too far away, but it is no environmental negative impact to the community or the area or ultimately Barnegat Bay. We'd like you to reconsider that the poles that are being proposed be eliminated and put underground, and a thorough investigation of where this electrical redundancy feed would be coming from. The permitting thing says it comes from the south. We feel that it comes from the north, and it's already in the town north of us, Point Pleasant Beach, which would be within feet of where this off-site location would be. Thus, you wouldn't need 15 telephone poles. Also, we feel that since those telephone poles were not a part of the original plan, people that are affected by those telephone poles were improperly noticed. And we would like to have you check into that. If we went beyond that, we would like the building, if it has to be in Bayhead and not on the site that's proposed now, but in Site 6, we would like the building further shrunk in size. It will be the tallest building in Bayhead. It is opposite our lake, which will be an aesthetic view, and I don't like to use aesthetics as a reason to move it somewhere else. But the main reason is it is out of the wetlands, doesn't affect the environment that would ultimately affect the Barnegat Bay. Also, in 2003, and none of the gentlemen that were in our meetings and whom we have met prior to and since, there was a settlement between Bayhead and New Jersey Transit on a fueling site that was proposed in Bayhead, and it ultimately was moved farther north. At that time, part of the agreement that was signed by both Bayhead and New Jersey Transit was that the site that presently houses the trains and the substation is contaminated. It was contaminated then. New Jersey Transit agreed to clean that site up. 17 years later, that site is far from clean. If it's 20%, that's a lot. That's a long time. So if you're going to disrupt that area, that contamination is still below the surface and will ultimately go through the wetlands into the bay and create more hazards than it's worth. We can talk about the endangered species there. We can talk about the historical value. SHPO, or the State Historical Preservation Office, granted you permission to build this building, but they would not grant the aesthetics that we had discussed with Ronnie Hakim, who was the director back in 2014, and now it's going to be brick, a solid brick. Also, around the transformers, they have built, or they're proposing to build, a 3-walled container for these transformers, and they could be outside. They're outside now. There is no reason why they can't still be outside. That would shrink the size of the building. The other part would be, and again, one of the reasons why Site 6 was turned down was because of the transformers. They don't want to shut the current transformers down to stop the electric going to the wayside power. But what's wrong with having temporary transformers and relocating them and still building on the site? So we ask you to look at that. Ideally, we'd like the height lowered. It does meet our ordinances, 38.5 feet above mean, or not mean high water, base flood elevation. But take a look at the current flood maps and see if it can't be lowered just a little bit. And the last thing that we would like is to invite Transit to come before our planning board, which you are allowed to do, for a courtesy review. Obviously, anything that planning board reviews is not binding upon Transit, but it would be a good indication of your willingness to give us a hearing and also allow the public another chance to hear what you plan to do and hopefully make some changes in what I've proposed. So at this time, really, that's all I would have. I hope if you have any questions, I'll be here, but I do appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Curtis Springstead.
Sorry about that, but if you had any idea how frequently my name is butchered, you'd be sympathetic. So again, I'm Kurt Springstead, and I'm with the Waldwick, New Jersey Historical Society. We've rehabilitated the 1890s era interlocking tower just north of the station there. I want to thank you for your support in terms of a long-term lease and easement that you've given us for the land that immediately adjacent to that tower. As previously reported to you, I just want to remind you that we've been working on this for 20 years. We've invested over $200,000 in that project. We've increased safety along the tracks there by about 150 feet of fence we built for you that prevents people from walking onto the tracks. It is encouraged the Waldwick Community Alliance to restore the station building. And we are told that the developers who just built those new apartments next to your track have also been excited by the work we started back in 1999. So our museum to railroading, the Erie Railroad, and the many, many employees who lived in the area has been moving along slowly and steadily. And to take it for the next level, I'm here to ask you for a very simple request. There was a device in that building known as a model board. It's a simple 3-foot by 5-foot piece of metal that we understand is in one of your orange warehouses. And we'd like to get that out. It was a map of the area and it indicated the condition of the track. We've been working with some of your employees who were part of the local rail fan community, and with their help, we've submitted formal requests for this thing for the last 5 to 7 years with no particular action. And we'd be happy to come by and just pick it up if we could just get the paperwork processed. So my ask is if the board could point me to a senior staff member who can help me get this processed and get it off your docket. I realize you have important things to do, but this is terribly critical to our project. We are celebrating 130 years of that building existing, and we think it would make a nice addition. So again, thank you for your interest and your support. And I apologize to Mr. Curtis.
Thank you. The next speaker is Peter Spall.
Excuse me. I'm a little nervous right now. These are my reading glasses, so please pardon me. Okay. Good evening, Commissioner, board members, board secretary, president, and CEO Corbett. My name is Peter Spall. I worked from 2007 until 2017 as an employee of New Jersey Transit. I'm starting with a quote. Everyone gets one chance to do something great. Most people never take the chance either because they're too scared or they don't recognize it when it spits on their shoes. George Herman Ruth. Today I'm here to advocate to the best of my abilities for the commuters and riders and citizens that interact with New Jersey Transit. The current customer advocate, Stuart Mader, has been insufficient in providing support to the public transportation riders and citizens of this region. There are better, more suitable candidates to champion this cause. Let me tell you a story. Fall 2007, Trenton, New Jersey, 5:30 a.m. A junior year criminology student parks at Hamilton Avenue Light Rail Station and walks the 20 minutes to the Trenton train station. He walks because the light rail doesn't run early in the morning, such as this. If he takes a later train or waited for that first light rail, he'd be late for his internship at the New Jersey Transit Police Department in Newark. That man's name was Peter Spall. About a year later, that same kid was about to graduate from the college in New Jersey and having a 3 a.m. conversation with his long-term girlfriend, one of those conversations that parents bemoan and young lovers lionize, their plans for the future, goals, and aspirations. The young man asked the young woman, what is your down-the-line dream in the future? She replied, and he was asked the same question. That young man, Peter Spall, me, replied that he wanted to eventually become executive director of New Jersey Transit. The young woman laughed heartily and said something to the effect of, we have a better shot of seeing the Mets win the World Series. I eventually married that woman. After graduating from TCNJ, I continued my record-keeping responsibilities with the New Jersey Transit Police Department part-time until I was hired full-time in November of 2009. These record-keeping responsibilities could be anything from logging data from summonses, filing arrest reports, incident reports, use of force reports, medical examiners reports, all the way down to releasing impounded motor vehicles to members of the public. On the 7th floor of this building, down the hall behind those glass doors at the police department, I worked behind that front window for 5 years. I asked Mr. Mader, have you ever dealt with an irate customer who has traveled halfway across the state to have their impounded motor vehicle released? Have you ever read a use of force report? Mr. Mader, not only have you read a medical examiner's report for a trespasser fatality, but have you seen the security camera footage of such an incident? Reading up on the need for transparency in our governmental entities as far back as 2007, I eventually made a career transition in August of 2012 to work for New Jersey Transit's board office as an Open Public Records Act specialist. It was in this position as an OPRA specialist that I was able to truly see the macro and micro issues inherent in running a one-of-the-kind transportation agency such as NJ Transit. Not just the nuts and bolts of this organization, but the antithesis that is applied to the threads of a bolt when a nut is being put on. In the capacity of this position, I saw everything in unredacted format, from employee salary data, contracts, and all the RFPs, all the way down to including email correspondence. At this time, this made me feel like the most hated man in New Jersey, considered an obstructionist by reporters and a muckraking snoop by colleagues. On one occasion at a training seminar, about 40 or 50 colleagues, top managers, department heads, booed me, literally booed en masse, for simply stating my duties as an OPRA specialist. I love my job for providing transparency to New Jersey Transit riders. I ask you, Mr. Mader, have you ever been booed by your colleagues and superiors in such a manner? Mr. Mader, have you ever been in front of a judge in Trenton so that you could review documents at the center of litigation? Mr. Mader, after reviewing undocumented emails as part of OPRA records requests pertaining to days leading up to Hurricane Sandy, have you ever been in a room full of senior level employees and the executive director singled you out personally, telling you to do your job and shut the FUC, see where I'm going? In January 2012, I sent in my letter of resignation to my boss. You're probably asking why I left New Jersey Transit. After being on disability for anxiety and bipolar disorder, I thought it was best and in the interest of the corporation to step aside and let capable hands take over. I was a sick person. I was and will always be an alcoholic. After trying, it seems that from the year... I'm going to stop for the time. I have a statement, and it's here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take the statement for the record. The next speaker is Bruce Bergen.
Sir. Oh, great.
Commissioner, board members, President Corbett, I'm Bruce Bergen. I'm chairman of the Raritan Valley Rail Coalition. We continue to look forward to the approval of 2 additional board members, in particular Jana Chernetz, who besides being a rail expert and very familiar with the needs of New Jersey's commuters, is a resident along and a frequent passenger on the Raritan Valley line. Last month I mentioned the positive news that the Federal Transit Administration categorized the North Portal Bridge project so as to make it eligible for federal funding. Unfortunately, I saw online today that an article was posted last Friday that the U.S. Justice Department issued an opinion calling into question another portion of the funding for that plan. I'm sure it is as frustrating to this agency as it is to our coalition and to our thousands of constituents to see new roadblocks placed in the path of the urgently needed Gateway project. Our group, as members of the Gateway Now coalition, plan to continue to press for federal support of this project. I want to thank President Corbett for his remarks before the March 4 hearing at the subcommittee of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee in Washington. in support of the pending surface transportation bill, which includes $55 billion for rail infrastructure across the country. Those remarks and those of Amtrak COO Stephen Gardner, Congressman Peter DeFazio of Oregon, who is the chairman of the committee, New Jersey Congressman Donald Payne Jr., and our Congressman Tom Malinowski, those remarks have all been posted on the Coalition webpage. And I want to thank each of those people for expressing their support, not only for the funding that was being discussed, but for the Gateway project as well. Turning more specifically to issues for the Raritan Valley line, I want to thank your staff for gathering for us statistics on the same platform transfers in Newark for our passengers as I had requested at your last monthly meeting. I look forward to having an opportunity to review those statistics in more detail. Finally, concerning expansion of one-seat ride, we are looking forward to the completion of the study mandated by S3574, and I offer the assistance of our members and all the elected officials along our line in any way that we can to help that process move ahead and to ensure a comprehensive report. As I have said before, we hope that the report will provide a game plan to help reach the Coalition's ultimate goal of rush hour one-seat ride for our riders. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Edward Nolan.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, and the board for allowing me my 2 minutes to speak, because I don't want to be repetitive on some of the things you've already heard. My name is Edward Nolan. I'm a homeowner in Bay Head, New Jersey. My home is in close proximity to the substation that is currently under proposal. And this, for the record, is I'm referencing project 1905-26. And this was a project that was approved by the board on May 8th, 2019. It was a unanimous vote, and the project approval had 2 contracts, one for the tune of $21 million that was awarded to PKF Markle Construction, and a second contract for $3.1 million to TJ Lynn. The project, just to reiterate real quickly, includes a building of 142-foot by 38-plus feet high structure. And this structure is not only the largest structure in Bay Head, but it's also one of the largest structures on the Barrier Island. By the way, this is part of the New Jersey Resilience Program, this Bay Head substation. And I know that New Jersey Transit has really taken it upon themselves to accommodate some of the problems we had with Hurricane Sandy, which we were affected by. So I really appreciate the time and effort you've put into that to shore up some of these exposures that we have. However, I do have some concerns with the current project as it stands. And the first comment is, I do live in close proximity of this proposed current site for this substation, and myself or my wife Ellen did not get any kind of notification of what was happening. Secondly, I can't stress enough that the substation is adjacent to wetlands. And these wetlands, Twilight Lake, drains into Barnegat Bay. Thirdly, the project is commandeering a part of the lake where they will be filling in part of the lake to accommodate the construction process. And this project will have both permanent and temporary transition area disturbance. Now, I'm not here to talk about how maybe I don't like the color brick or anything else. No, That's not what I'm here for. What I'm here for is to voice a concern that there are alternative sites that have been reviewed, and I don't have the wherewithal engineering-wise to comment on whether that's a positive or negative with some of these alternatives, but I do know that some of these alternative sites do not require impeding on Twilight Lake, and that's important. I know the project also includes a backup generator, and it includes a 4,000-plus gallon diesel tank to be able to accommodate the generator. Now, at the end of the day, I question, and what my concern is, right now there is a fairly likelihood of a potential catastrophe that could impact the wetlands. Okay? God forbid that happens. I don't want that to happen, and I know New Jersey Transit does not want that to happen. That the effort you guys put forward in making sure your projects are compliant and making sure your projects don't lead to a potential negative impact, because I know the last thing you want is negative public opinion. What I do say as a businessman who owned my own business for 20 years, I'm looking at the risk versus reward here. And my ending comment is, why take the risk at all when there are viable alternatives? So thank you all for your time. And one other quick comment to New Jersey Transit and Kevin Corbett. Congratulations on those great results. As a customer of New Jersey Transit, you really appreciate the fact that you guys had some exceptional record performance. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ella Nolan.
Hi. Want to thank you all for your time. I'm going to be brief. I wanted to know if any of you have actually visited our Twilight Lake down in Bayhead. Blink twice if you have. It's a lovely spot. We've got egrets and we have blue herons, and the swans are back since Hurricane Sandy. You can see the kids out there all summer long on paddle boards, kayaks, and there's a little dock where people are always fishing and just hanging out because it's just a lovely spot. My thoughts are, why would we have this industrial type of activity going on in a location where people go to observe nature and participate in recreational activities when there are other alternatives? Bayhead Yard is listed as one of our contaminated sites, and how can we trust that this is not going to continue in a negative fashion for contamination when NJ Trident said activities are what cause the contamination to begin with? So I just ask you also, how can we trust that the species of birds and so forth that are there are going to be protected while this construction of a massive building and industrial activity is going on there? So I just ask you all to rethink it, relook at the stats, relook at the plan, and make a better decision on the location of the substation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jack May.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. Both the New Jersey Association of Railroad Passengers and the Lackawanna Coalition ask NJ Transit board members to vote no on the organization's budget proposal transmittal because it is seriously short of the data necessary for making an educated decision. We believe NJ Transit staff should have given the board, especially its newest members, the courtesy and opportunity to review the budget in detail at a board administration committee meeting as required by law. But that did not occur, and as a result, board members and the public were not able to pose questions and receive answers. Simply put, insufficient information should make it impossible for a board member to vote yes on this item if he or she were to perform the required fiduciary duty. The information is just not there. The board needs better data and action plans to be included in the budget document. We urge a no vote for both procedural reasons, as I just mentioned, and for reasons regarding the content of the transmittal, both because of the absence of essential data and because of incorrect assumptions. Despite the huge amount of material presented, much of it is irrelevant. One of our officers characterized it as nothing less than a data dump. But here are some, but not all, of the important items. Performance goals. The proposed budget calls for increased financial support. But where are the performance goals for fiscal year 21 and 22 to justify these increased funds? Where are the goals for 21 key performance indicators listed in Appendix B? What is the increased funding supposed to accomplish in terms of these key items? One example of goals I'd like to point out refers to the missing trains from 2018. Which of the dozens of trains temporarily discontinued until early 2019 due to PTC implementation does NJT plan to return to service in fiscal year 21? Especially important to NJ Transit riders is the 21st peak hour train, whose removal reduced by 1,088 desperately needed peak hour seats into New York Penn Station. Supplying monthly goals for this and then updating them is very important. We also believe this document should contain both the large and small positive train control milestones for the remaining months of fiscal year 20 and each month of fiscal year 21, including the start of revenue service demonstration, as President Corbett was talking about. These too should be supplied and updated monthly, indicating whether and when monthly goals and dates are being achieved. Variance analysis. A line-by-line variance analysis of the proposed four-year budget outlook, fiscal year 20 versus 21 and 22, should be included. Plus, there should be an additional column for fiscal year 20, so one shows the budgeted numbers and the other the estimated numbers. The numbers in these columns should be compared to each other with reasons enumerated for the differences, as is normal for such analyses. Personnel, detail regarding the size of the workforce and accompanying wages and salaries. This is especially important because of the train annulment cancellations due to engineer shortages. The exhibit shows the number of new hires, for example, 100 in January 2020. That should be netted against the 10 retirements and the 28 separations. We need to know how many retirements are expected during the balance of 2020, as well as why there are so many separations. The riding public is told 100 new hires, but they don't know the actual net figure is really 62, given 38 leaving the workplace. Additionally, they don't know how many of the net 62 are actually engineers. Can a breakdown be given for the number of engineers, conductors, bus operators? Because my time is up, I would like the indulgence of just briefly mentioning other items in the document that you have, the dollar amounts, insurance rate changes, an overview of the capital program, the capital budget transfers, because we understand that today's reality regards the need for them. So in conclusion, both of our organizations believe it is incumbent upon NJ Transit board members to kick this budget back to NJT staff and to demand a meeting of the board's administration committee, complete with questions and answers, once far better documentation is created and made available. This would resolve the current direct violation of the NJ Transit Reform Act. And if you cannot find it in your heart to vote no, then at least abstain. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joseph Clift.
Good evening. I first want to say I'm so happy that Mr. G and his team of orange T-shirts don't have to come anymore. I just really think it's wonderful that that was settled. Let me make a couple of comments on Jack May's discussion. This board has been a rubber stamp for years. The new board members are probably not aware of that because you haven't been coming like I have and Jack May and others. But your job is to be independent. And what Jack was saying was, you don't have the information here to make an informed decision. And let me just read from the law. This is the New Jersey Transit Reform Act. It says the administration committee shall advise the board of directors on financial matters, including but not limited to proposed budgets, including the capital program. Now, I went to the committee meeting. Guess what? Not a word of this, and a week later, this data dump appears. That is not good corporate governance. And I urge all of you, if you can't vote no, at least abstain so the staff will know the next time around they need to really give you the information to make a decision. And we mentioned on the capital program, there are many pieces there that don't make any sense. There's no information on Transportation Trust Fund. They are adhering to the letter of the law, but they're not providing you enough information to make a decision. You should be able to see for each project why it's being done, how much it costs, where the money is coming from. The law says they have to tell you about appropriations, but the TTF, the Transportation Trust Fund, is appropriated all in one piece. So each of these individual projects, you can't see that information. So I urge you, think about your job as independent board members and vote accordingly. I want to thank the board staff. They're now printing color. This is in the report, used to be black and white, and everybody that's looked at graphs knows when you do color graphs and you print them in black and white, it comes out in mud. But now we have color graphs, so I wanted to thank the board staff for that. 2 tours I've recommended before, I want to say again. One is come with me and see New York Penn Station, see how it can grow on the New Jersey Transit side to handle more trains. The Long Island Railroad side, which has fewer tracks, handles 36 trains in the peak hour. On your side, it's only 25. So if you come, you can see it. It's a really incredible place. The folks that designed this long ago did a great job. It can be improved, and I can show you what those improvements are. The other tour, and there's a time restriction on this tour, is to go see the Canarsie Tunnel Project. Right now, every night at 8 o'clock, they shut down one of those tubes and they work on it. They are putting in, they've put in actually all the cables on racks. You've heard of cable racking. They have put fiber reinforced polymer on the bench walls that are in danger of collapsing. And they're doing all this on nights and weekends when they are done. And I'm sure that Governor Cuomo on April 26th, if not before, the anniversary of the shutdown at night of one tube, will be there to cut the ribbon. So if you want that tour, and I really suggest you take it, you're going to have to do it soon. And most of you probably know that on February 27th, in her testimony, I believe to the House Subcommittee on Appropriations, Secretary Elaine Chao for Transportation said Amtrak is going to do these repairs before a new tunnel is built. Amtrak is embracing cable racking. I would like to think that New Jersey Transit would also do that. You can get things done 10 years sooner, a lot cheaper, and it just makes great sense. But once again, you'll have to take that tour soon because the end of April, they're going to be running the 2 tubes all the time. Right now, 1 tube operates at night with trains going in each direction, alternating. The good news about New Jersey Transit, your weekend schedule and late night schedule already allow for a single tube to operate. So the improvements, the work in the tunnel could be done, and the public would never know it was happening. Last comment, Portal North Bridge. A week from tomorrow, the rules on Portal North Bridge will become permanent. From 5 a.m. to 10 a.m., from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. every weekday, that bridge is locked closed. You have solved the $1.7 billion problem of Portal North Bridge. The only reason that project exists is to provide a reliable bridge. It's not going to add capacity, no matter what people claim, and here it's been done administratively. So I urge you, take a look at these projects, figure out where New Jersey money should be spent well and where it's not being spent well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Tim Sevener.
Hello, I'm Tim Sevener from the Transit Village of Mount Tabor, and representing, well, I'm a member of New Jersey Association of Rail Passengers and also the Don't Gas the Meadowlands Coalition. But I'm not here to speak about that tonight. One thing I'd like to congratulate you. When I went to the NJTPA meeting from my train station Monday morning, somebody was cleaning off the ticket machine. Thank you very much. So I could see firsthand that you really are making efforts for the coronavirus, COVID-19. But what I would like to say is I think New Jersey Transit has had historically a bunker mentality. And I hope this board can change it. I do see some changes happening, like the Russell Gaddy settlement. I think things are starting to happen at New Jersey Transit to actually improve things instead of just going down, like my 22 trains, weekday trains got every day on the Morris line, which Kevin rides. But I think you can do a lot more. When working, I thank you for meeting with us about the possibility of solar renewable rail instead of the 24/7, 100 megawatt polluting natural gas plant, which is not really necessary. But I still see sort of this attitude that you can't change. This is the way we're doing it, and not really listening to the latest technology and improvements. We are here to work with you. We want to work with you. You have such a resource. You have to realize you are green transit. You are the solution for climate change right here. Electric rail can be renewably powered. That has to be part of the energy management plan. It is not. You have to get it in there. We have to get cars off of the road. But we want to work with you to improve it. Our group has consulted people, one of the solar experts in the state of New Jersey, on how we could do the solar. But still we get, well, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. We don't have a choice. We have to change now. We have 10 years. Or else we're all fried. Look at this past winter. So, and also as part of the Solar Rail Coalition, students, the climate change students are very active. They know this is critical. We can't have more fossil fuel plants. We need to convert to green transit, electric rail, public transit. They are excited. They will work with you. Here's an example how you could work together. So Russell Gaddy, I don't know the exact situation with this restaurant, but actually you are sitting on possible real revenue that would be a benefit for everybody. At the Morristown station, you know, Kevin, the eastbound New York side is always, it's all about going to New York and back. Hoboken doesn't count. That's where the 22 trains were cut since 2006. On the other side, the westbound side, It is all closed up, cobweb. There's no ticket machines. It just and who do I get on that side with? Usually it's students, it's working people, it's Hispanics. You could use that property, partner with somebody, bring a restaurant in there, some coffee shop, something. Use that property. You could actually get revenue from it. When it's like 10 degrees out, you have some place for people to shelter. This is true all over. The Bloomfield station, where I go on every week to work at New Jersey Peace Action in Bloomfield, it's decrepit. You need to make use of your properties and make it appealing. And you could actually make money on that if you manage it properly. You need to make coalitions. There is somebody who's a friend of the Morristown train station. There's a group. I saw a sign about that. But we need to set that up in all the stations. Work with the community. Outreach. Don't be behind a bunker. Please, outreach to us. We need this to survive the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Joseph Bazralian.
Thank you very much. Joe Bezralian, Chatham, New Jersey. I'm amongst the millions of people in New Jersey rooting for New Jersey Transit. Thank you for all that you do and all that you're really trying to do. I know there's constraints, but we know you're working hard, and we greatly appreciate it. You're the people's agency, touching more people than probably anything else in New Jersey. And that is just why I would implore you, as you think about this one particular decision that eventually you'll have to make, do not support. I implore you not to make a historically bad decision to support a gas-fired power plant when you can have solar and renewable. It's a pollution issue. We're the people's agency, not the pollution agency. I spent a long time talking to pulmonologists, and my biggest concern is air pollution. Where gas-fired power plants produce ground-level ozone, which gets into people's lungs and particularly hurts people with asthma and COPD. And in this area, this area has gotten Fs before from the American Pulmonology Association. When that type of ground-level ozone from these power plants gets into people's lungs, it makes them sick and sicker. And we also know it makes them more vulnerable to viral contractions that come through the lungs. I'm not a virologist, but to me it's not a tremendous coincidence that a lot of these novel viruses come out of places like China with really bad air pollution. So we really are dealing with something new here. Business as usual, gas-fired power plants, we have to think about it differently and go for the alternative of renewable and battery. And then we look at all the people, we go back up the pipeline. How do you bring the gas in? People detest when gas pipelines are going to be built through their neighborhoods and near their houses. And a lot of our communities, dozens and dozens of our communities in New Jersey are dealing with this. If we have a new gas-fired power plant for 30 or 40 years, we're going to have more of these issues of people wanting to cut through our neighborhoods. Then you go back up the pipeline where the gas is produced, and particularly in all kinds of towns and neighborhoods around the country where natural gas is fracked and produced, there's pollution. There's people who have problems with their water. Some people can light their water coming out of their faucet on fire, and it always hits the most disadvantaged communities. This isn't the agency that should be perpetuating something like that. And ultimately, the source of funds that's being looked at to build this power plant, Superstorm Sandy relief funds, I can't think of anything more silly, and surely no one here dreamed it up, but more crazy than using a pot of money that's supposed to protect us from climate change and global warming, and is instead going to be build this kind of a power plant that will further add to global warming and further make all of the risks that are coming down the line even worse. So we really want NJT to survive. We see it as not just survive, but to thrive and to continue to be the people's agency. So I think with this one decision to push back on where this idea is coming from, get the power in a renewable and battery form, and I think it's something we can all remember why we're, that is something that we can all get behind. And I think it's the right decision for the People's Agency to do that. Thank you again for your time. Thank you again for all that you're doing every day.
Thank you. The next speaker is Norman Suteria.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, President Corbett and the board. I've appeared before many of you before, and I just wanted to, by a show of hands, how many here in the room are familiar with the acronym BLUF, B-L-U-F? Nobody, okay. It stands for bottom line upfront. And I'm here to talk with you and tell you about the bottom lines upfront, 3 immediate steps how New Jersey Transit can take to help customers. Number one, customers deserve transparency, honesty, and the truth at all times, even when it is news that is hard to deliver and accept. This was evident when I asked the question at the operations meeting, what happened on February 27th, and was told, you know, it was a signal overrun rather than a signal issue. I think that all of the riders in the room, all of the commuters deserve the truth about what happened. And it shouldn't have taken me to come and ask, you know, the operations committee why that was. Operationally, it could also look like your frontline employees helping customers find alternatives. Sometimes frontline staff know that the delays are significant and in that moment can make a suggestion to customers about what paths to take that would get them home. Number two, communicate New Jersey Transit's strategic plan. Mr. Corbett, do you know when can we expect New Jersey Transit's strategic plan?
This is not, that's not a forum.
That's fine. All right. So we are still waiting on a strategic plan and from New Jersey Transit. Also, it's important for all riders to understand service disruption plans. You know, what happens? Just what are the plans that New Jersey Transit has so that we can make alternative plans? Today, there was already cross-honoring this afternoon for a short period of time due to the Amtrak train that was stuck in the tunnel. I would like to know, you know, sort of how long does that last typically, and with whom? Also, when there are delays or sort of a post-mortem, time to notification down the chain from bus operations or from rail operations to bus operations. And then finally, and also operationally, what does this look like given all of the New Jersey, the transit-oriented development happening? It's amazing what's happening in my neck of the woods at the Watsessing train station in Bloomfield, in other pockets across New Jersey. How is New Jersey Transit getting ahead of this issue and monitoring and forecasting the increased ridership in the next 5 to 7 years? And then finally, and Tim spoke to this too, in addition to having social media, New Jersey Transit should really consider holding quarterly town hall meetings that are solution focused at stations, hubs, here at headquarters, because we really truly want to improve the system for the long term. Thanks.
Thank you. The next speaker is Adam Reich.
Commissioner Gutierrez-Cachetti, President and CEO Corbett, and members of the New Jersey Transit Board, thank you for letting me come before you. My name is Adam Reich. I am a commuter between Metuchen and Trenton, a user of the system for leisure on weekends, the rail system, mainly the Northeast Corridor line. And I just want to convey a few things from my observations as a commuter who's fairly well engaged in current developments on New Jersey Transit and communication. First, I'd like to discuss cleanliness and communication and transparency. I find trains coming out of Trenton for the evening commute, going reverse peak, tend to have cleanliness issues. It's common to walk through the trains and see Zaros cups, meaning that they came all the way from Newark or New York on the last run, bags, newspapers, things like that. I don't know whether the issue specifically is manpower, whether it's scheduling, if there's not enough gaps, time between runs to adequately clean those trains, but that is something that does require analysis. Furthermore, when a rider raises issues with them, as I do, there need to be improvements in the communication. By way of example, in recent weeks, February 28th, I boarded a train 3893 out of New York Penn Station, and was horrified to see in one of the rows a beer bottle and vomit on the floor. Now, I don't know whether the issue was that the incoming train crew didn't communicate it, whether there weren't car cleaners present, or whether there wasn't enough time, but boarding public should not come on a train and see that. And I understand that there are enhanced protocols that are being deployed now, but that is something that desperately needs attention. With the communication front also, for example, last week on March 4th, I tweeted about train 3862, garbage in several cars coming out of Trenton. I got a response, which was basically, we forwarded it to the appropriate team. Well, that's all well and good, but then the next couple nights I did a similar thing, no response. And on top of that, the response, we forwarded it to the appropriate team, has not come with any follow-up. When that's the message I get, it just seems to be this. There needs to be some sort of protocol in place for following up. I don't know if it's giving a tracking number, if there are periodic reports we want to make publicly, but something should be done to show not just that we're acknowledging the issue, but that we can actually keep tabs on it and show riders that more is being done to address that. With COVID-19, I appreciate the work New Jersey Transit has been doing, but there were definitely issues with their initial announcements on that. The initial announcement came, I believe, on March 3rd and was rather vague. Conversely, just announcing enhanced cleaning protocols without any standard, any metric. The MTA, by contrast, had come out at least a day earlier saying we would clean rail cars, disinfect cars every day, and ensure disinfecting at facilities within 72 hours, something to that effect. I know New Jersey Transit did follow up with that more later, but still, more should be done up front. Give us a quantifiable standard. It's still not clear to me, and I think the riding public, how does that actually differ, these metrics you've put out? How do they differ from what the normal protocols are? Moving that aside, because I see I am limited on time here, St. Patrick's Day is another thing. I understand there are concerns with people drinking on trains, but the protocol New Jersey Transit has in place on a weekday, mind you, is no beverages whatsoever. Any containers sealed open, not allowed. Well, that doesn't take into account people like me who are simply working. You know, you're taking away my coffee, and it's not as if I'm getting a credit on my monthly pass or something to make up for that. The MTA, by contrast, only bans alcoholic beverages. And I would strongly encourage you to see if you can put in a more narrowly tailored restriction like that. I don't think New Jersey riders are any worse than those of, say, the LIRR. At least I hope not. Finally, one important point with the limited time I have left is station inspection. More needs to be done with that. I feel like I flag issues as a rider that the inspection teams need to be aware of. One particularly important issue is one I've reported already, if I may briefly finish this point, and that's New Brunswick. The George and Somerset Street staircase on the east end of track 4. It's a metal staircase. There is a visible hole. You can see the street traffic below. First of all, I hope somebody has followed up on my communicating that and actually gone to inspect it. If not, please send somebody there, because that definitely is concerning, seeing a rust to the point that a hole is there. And in general, once that's done, review what happened with the inspections. Was somebody aware of this before I brought it up? If not, why not? How can we do better? This isn't the first station I've flagged that issues like that. Edison Station previously had an issue where supports affixing railings to platforms had completely corroded away due to salt. So again, please look at the inspection protocols there too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Peter Allen.
Good evening again. Despite my many affiliations, I'm making a personal statement to introduce myself to the new board members and to mention some important items about this board and other topics. I have come before this board many times in the past 20 years as chair of the Lackawanna Coalition. I am also the longest-serving member of the Senior Citizens and Disabled Residents Transportation Advisory Committee, SCATTERTAC, so I'm interested in issues of disability and accommodation for seniors. Nationally, I'm on the board of RUN, the Rail Users Network, and I'm also a journalist. I'm a contributing editor at Railway Age, which has served the railroad industry since 1856. I have already complimented you on reaching your settlement with Mr. G, and I also compliment you on moving the executive session back to the end of the meeting. In 2012, I personally proposed a number of board reforms to Jim Simpson, who was commissioner at the time. The only one he implemented was moving the executive session from the beginning to the end of the meeting, and that lasted until the beginning of the current administration. Since then, we have all suffered massive inconvenience having to wait through your lengthy private deliberations. So we thank you again for fixing this problem and once again adopting the suggestion that I had made back in 2012. We really do appreciate that. Friday, May 15th will be a big day for transit here in Newark. The Rail Users Network, RUN, will be holding its annual spring conference here in cooperation with the Lackawanna Coalition, with New Jersey Transit, and with the NJTPA at the NJTPA offices. This is the first time I know of that a rail conference of national scope with nationally known presenters will be held in Newark, and New Jersey Transit will participate in the welcoming remarks and also with presentations by Ray Kenny, your head of rail, and by former journalist and lawyer, and now your Chief of External Affairs, Paul Wyckoff. So we hope that you will come to the conference. There'll also be a transit tour on Saturday, and we'll welcome New Jersey Transit's participation in that too. To register or learn more, please go to the RUN website, railusers.net. I have been coming before this board for many years as a representative of New Jersey Transit's riders, and almost without exception, what I've met is either silence at best or vitriolic contempt at worst. I can think of only one time when this board ever implemented quickly a suggestion made by a representative of the riders. That was about 5 years ago when Al Papp complained about the condition of the restrooms at Penn Station in Newark, and Commissioner Simpson ordered immediate repairs. That's the only time I can think of when this board ever sprung into action when we suggested something. My colleague Joe Clift hopes that you new board members will take the needs of the riders more seriously and show greater independence than in the past. And while I'm open to being pleasantly surprised, my experience over the last 2 decades makes me doubt that. I have submitted as an exhibit a list of all dissenting votes ever cast at this board until 2013, which I obtained from New Jersey Transit through Oprah. Only twice, in 1995 and again in 1996, did this board overrule any management initiative. There have been no dissenting votes since 2003, except once in 2015 when Commissioner Hammer objected to a personal injury settlement, and Flora Castillo voted no twice in 2016. And despite her lengthy service and diversity points, she was not renewed. The inference was obvious, and when I mentioned it in print, nobody disputed it. If enforced unanimity is not a breach of fiduciary duty of a board, I don't know what is. And there are no real representatives of the riders on this board. Several well-known advocates, including me, wanted to apply to be rider representatives, but we were not allowed to do so. when I campaigned for true reform at the legislature, including having at least one transit-dependent person on the board, I got absolutely nowhere, no support at all, including from Mr. Gordon. So you still consider those of us who depend on the transit that you govern as undeserving of a seat at the table. And if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And we who depend on transit are tired of being on the menu, but we expect at this rate we will be for many years to come. New Jersey has boards of chosen freeholders in the counties, but you people are New Jersey Transit's board of chosen motorists. We want to know why you're that way and why you exclude those of us who depend on the transit that you allow us to have. You've settled with Mr. G. It seems to me now you can let some of us who depend on transit onto the board as well.
Thank you. Next, we have 5 speakers regarding the microgrid project. As is our protocol, when there are several people speaking on the same topic, 2 speakers will have 5 minutes to provide comments, and all other speakers will have 2 minutes to provide comments. The first speaker is Ted Glick, who will have 5 minutes to provide comments.
Thank you, and good evening. I'm the president of the group 350 New Jersey. The organization 350.org is an international organization, maybe in 100 countries, chapters all around the United States, and what we work on is the issue of the climate crisis, the global warming crisis. It's basically a climate emergency. It's been getting worse. 350, just in case people aren't aware, refers to the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that is, will allow us to have a planet that is more or less livable, and where our ecosystems are in relative balance. Scientists have, their view is, who have looked at this, is that 350 parts per million is the maximum concentration. Right now, we're at about 412 parts per million, and we're rapidly increasing. 50 years ago, the amount of carbon dioxide was going up about 1/2 of a part per million. Right now, it's going up about 2.5 parts per million per year. So it's accelerating. And in that context, with all the extreme weather events that we're seeing all around the world, it's everywhere. It's in all the continents, including the Arctic and the Antarctic, in Australia with the fires, all the extreme weather events that are happening with us here in North America. With all of that, it is really wrong frankly, for the governor to not be enacting a moratorium on all of the fossil fuel projects that right now are in the works, that are being planned. There's about a dozen of them right now. There's several that are stalled, some that have been pretty much killed, like the Meadowlands Power Plant in North Bergen. That's good. There's a coalition of about 90 organizations around the state working to try to get a moratorium on all of these projects. One of these 12 is the power plant, the gas-fired power plant in Kearney in the Meadowlands. There is an alternative to that. The brother before me spoke about that. My understanding is the proposal for that says that it will be built over a period of about 5 years. It will come to actually be put into operation in 5 years, in 2025. 5 years from now, renewable energy, wind and solar and battery storage, which is a rapidly advancing technology, is going to be way beyond where it is right now in terms of worldwide as a primary energy source. It's without question the energy source of the future, and it's increasingly becoming more and more the energy source of today. The prices for wind and solar have come down tremendously. Those are sources of energy that are very competitive with all the fossil fuels. But this thing about gas, this is the main thing I want to say. Some people see gas, natural gas, which these days is primarily frack gas. 70% of the natural gas that comes out of the ground is produced by the process of fracking. which is very destructive. It's very destructive for people living near the fracking wells in terms of water and air and soil pollution. And it's very dangerous in terms of health and safety of people who live near pipelines or compressor stations or the technology. But it's very dangerous in terms of the climate because natural gas, about 90 to 95% of it is methane. That's what natural gas essentially is, methane. Methane is, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, thousands of scientists around the world who have been studying this for over 30 years. Their assessment is that that gas, methane gas, frack gas, is 86 times more powerful as a global warming forcer than carbon dioxide. So if we are shifting increasingly from coal to gas, we are not making progress when it comes to what is needed. So we need to get off of gas. We need to get off of all of the fossil fuels. Natural gas is not a bridge fuel. It's a gangplank to a very, even more destructive future. And this board should not be part of that. You should frankly not be complicit with that. Think of your children and your grandchildren. And let's move together to renewable energy, to battery storage, to a clean energy future for New Jersey and the world. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Paula Rogovin.
Good evening. I'm also very happy that there was finally a settlement with Mr. Grady. It's so important. A few months ago, Janet Glass, a friend of mine, Janet Glass spoke at the New Jersey Transit Board meeting. She's a resident of North Bergen, a retired teacher, a grandmother, parent, and activist against the North Bergen Liberty Generating frack gas power plant, which Governor Murphy finally said it does not make sense for New Jersey. Janet Glass spoke here at the Transit Board meeting. She's now dying. She has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's terminal. Until she was diagnosed recently, she was healthy, a folk dancer, a healthy eater, and an activist. Why do I tell you about Janet Glass? At several events, Janet Glass spoke personally to the governor about the dangers of pollution from the proposed power plants, the North Bergen Liberty Generating Plant and the New Jersey Transit frack gas power plant. She told him that the pollution would cause asthma and lung and heart problems and cancers. The American Lung Association rated New Jersey F on ground level ozone, smog. We all know it as smog. It causes asthma and other lung and heart conditions. The governor recently had a tumor removed from his kidney. It was fortunate, so fortunate for him that was successful, and we're glad that it was successful. Janet will not be as so fortunate. And that's why we're calling on Governor Murphy and calling on you, each of you, to say no to the construction of the New Jersey Transit frack gas power plant in the Meadowlands in Kearney. We need you to take the initiative. Somebody here on this board, take the initiative to say no to that power plant. There's money for it, and as previous speaker said, the Sandy Resilience Grant, money for Sandy Resilience going to a frack gas power plant. It is absurd. It makes no sense, and it's wrong. And we hope that you will do something. We need the governor, and we need you to issue a statement such as this. I wrote it for you. You can use it. You can copy it. I, Governor Murphy, or we, the New Jersey Transit Board, no longer support the proposal for a 24/7, 100-megawatt natural gas plant for New Jersey Transit. Instead, we plan to support the alternative, renewable energy battery storage rail. This initiative will begin by using the $400 million plus from the federal Sandy Resilience Grant. The Energy Master Plan indicates that the transportation sector is one of the major sources of greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gases and the pollutants from a natural gas power plant for New Jersey Transit will impact the health and have dire consequences such as lung and heart diseases, cancers, and other health problems. It will have a particularly harsh impact on environmental justice communities, which the governor promised in one of his early executive order to protect. He promised to protect environmental justice communities. This power plant makes no sense, and it's a total contradiction of his goal to protect. We can no longer consider the construction of this plant as it would build in these pollutants for 30 to 40 years into the future. The Renewable Rail Initiative will move New Jersey to the forefront of efforts to transition the transportation by rail sector from fossil fuels, which cause the climate emergency, to renewable sources such as wind, solar, and hydro, and battery storage. It will serve to protect the health and well-being of residents. The state of New Jersey will make every effort to involve the public and private academic institutions, government agencies, and commercial businesses for this renewable rail initiative.
Thank you. The next speaker is Samantha DeFalco.
My name is Samantha DeFalco. I am from Morris County, and I am an organizer with the environmental group Food and Water Action. We are calling upon Governor Murphy and the NJ Transit Board to reject the NJ Transit power plant proposed as part of the NJ Transit Grid project and redirect the immense climate resiliency grant that would pay for it towards an alternative based on renewable power and battery storage. It makes no sense that a state agency would propose building a new fossil fuel power plant when the state's own energy master plan seeks to rapidly reduce emissions and eventually achieve 100% clean energy by 2050. We cannot meet that goal by building a new source of pollution. The energy master plan also calls for 2,000 megawatts of battery storage by 2030. This is the perfect opportunity for NJ Transit to help New Jersey fulfill that goal by using the federal grant money earmarked for natural disaster resiliency. This power plant will be yet another major polluter that will directly and adversely impact low-income communities of color in Kearney, Newark, and Jersey City Heights and surrounding areas of Hudson County. This would completely contradict Governor Murphy's executive order to protect environmental justice communities from further pollution burdens. Investing money in new fossil fuel infrastructures also poses considerable financial risks. A recent study by the Rocky Mountain Institute shows that it will soon be more expensive to run the vast majority of gas-fired plants currently proposed around the country than it would be to build new wind and solar farms equipped with battery storage systems. This means that gas plants, like the one proposed by NJ Transit, will become uneconomical and likely decommissioned before their expected lifetime. The climate crisis is real, and it's worsening. It's my generation and your children and grandchildren's future on the line here. We have the opportunity to invest the $546 million of free grant money in a renewable power and battery storage alternative. This is a 21st century solution that would put New Jersey at the forefront of the global transition to clean transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. If anyone has statements to be entered into the record, I'll be happy to take them. The next speaker is Sid Madison.
I have something that I have something I will give to you.
Okay,
And
thank you.
instead of reading something that was almost 2 minutes long, I'm going to cut to some of the important points, and I think they're really interesting to you. For example, the fossil fuel plant can't exist for more than 30 years if we're going to make a livable planet. There are not going to be any fossil fuels after 30 years. So the life of a fossil fuel plant is 30 years. The life of a renewable energy plant is closer to 60 years. For the same amount of money, or double the amount of money for a renewable plant that lasts twice as long, is the same cost per year as a fossil fuel plant. That's a solution on the cost side of the initial cost. On the recurring cost, you cannot have fossil fuels that are not more expensive over the next 30 years. In fact, we're supposed to eliminate about 50% of the fossil fuels in the next 15 years. If you eliminate half the fossil fuels in 15 years, then the life of that plant is not 30, but it's 15. And the recurring costs are going to go up on fossil fuels. They're going to go down on renewables. If you figure that into the analysis, there's not going to be a fossil fuel plant, period. And it's time for everybody to recognize that the lifetime of a fossil fuel plant is way shorter, and that makes the cost higher. And I don't want to pay the costs, and none of us want to have the impacts on climate of a fossil fuel plant. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Eric Furs.
Hello, I'm a mechanical engineer who has worked on capital projects with the DEP and DOT of New York City. After reading the proposed Bayhead substation documentation, I, as a professional, would not sign off on any of these documents. I would like to call to your attention a small sample of the issues within so you, the executive committee, may determine if this project warrants further review. The Bayhead Yard is the terminus of the North Jersey coastline. Locomotives on this section of rail between Bayhead and Long Branch are diesel powered. The electrical substation does not provide traction power and is not required for diesel locomotives to operate. Per New Jersey Transit's development description, the substation provides power to equipment in the yard such as track switch heaters, only used during snow or icy conditions, indoor air compressors, permitting the shutdown of locomotives for overnight staging, and wayside power, also permitting the shutdown of locomotive engines for overnight staging. It's hard to accept the lack of track switch heaters and overnight shutdown services would, quote, prevent New Jersey Transit from maintaining adequate train schedules, quote, result in the total shutdown of the Bayhead Yard, and, quote, limit train availability during the day. There are currently two substations on site. The 1985 substation consists of two outdoor transformers on a concrete pad. There is no building associated with this substation. The 2006 substation, also two outdoor transformers at either end of a small building, 18 by 25 feet. Somehow we go from a single 450 square foot building, which was adequate for the last 14 years, to requiring a building that is 5,600 square feet, over 12 times the size, which does not provide any additional capabilities for operations. In addition, the portion of the proposed building, which encroaches into wetlands, is an empty maintenance room per the construction plans. It seems like an irresponsible use of a critical natural resource and a perfect example of the recurring oversight on this project. Per Transit's own report, the 450 square foot substation has been adequately powering all yard operations during the 7 years since Sandy. This building, just 14 years old, will be demolished to accommodate a new generator building, which includes an outdoor 4,000-gallon diesel tank adjacent to a waterway. The existing building was not damaged during Sandy, only some of the equipment inside. Quote, an alternatives analysis would be necessary to justify the proposed location. This is a quote from the December 13 New Jersey Transit meeting minutes before design work started. From this quote, it sounds like the alternate analysis was created to justify the proposed location instead of actually investigate if alternates could work. The alternate analysis contains zero supporting documents such as calculations or a survey of utilities. I agree, the analysis is nothing but an opinion used to, quote, justify the proposed location. New Jersey Transit's own words, not mine. Let's read some of this analysis. The off-site alternate was currently an empty parking lot adjacent to New Jersey Transit right-of-way
Excuse me.
with no environmental impacts.
You're well over your time. You need to please wrap up.
Sure. The aerial crossing of 13 kV lines is not suitable. An overhead 13 kV line is not possible for this alternate, which doesn't impact wetlands, but somehow the proposed overhead 34 kV line, 2.5 times the voltage, along the exact same path is possible. It can't be both ways. Either this site is buildable or the proposed redundant feed is not possible. There's several other sites that were examined, and it's clear that these alternate sites with no impact wetlands do exist. These sites were carelessly eliminated, citing certain construction methods, which will actually be employed to develop the initial wetland site. As the top executives of New Jersey Transit, I anticipate your professional response to correct the unprofessional work that has transpired so far. Together, let's make this project less about justifying proposed locations and more about determining the proper location with the lowest risk to transit infrastructure and the least impact on surrounding environments, historical districts, and daily commuters. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no further speakers.
At this time, I would ask Suzanne Mack to present the advisory committee report.
Good evening, Commissioner and senior staff, and our new board members are here again. It's very nice to be here. I know it's about 8:30 almost, and I realize that you haven't actually voted on any of your items yet, so I'll be very brief. The advisory board will be meeting at the transaction conference this year. We have not had a meeting yet this month. So I will not comment on our agenda on that, but I did want to comment on a few things that have come up during, especially S630. The Senate Oversight Committee that did that bill was very far-reaching in thinking about how you could change. I know the commissioners left the room. I wanted to say to her that I sat here last spring when Russell Grady was here, and she asked him to trust this board, that they would, even though it was an action of a prior board, that this board would rise to the occasion and address the issue. And I don't think she was believed at that time, but tonight we can say that the commissioner keeps her promises, as does this board. I'd like to stay with that theme because we're here tonight. We're lucky we are here tonight, I believe, because with the governor's emergency, we really should look at the coronavirus and the wonderful staff response and the executive management response to this threat. We look at it and we say, I've heard people say, well, it's just about cleaning the cars. It's really not just about cleaning the cars. It's a public health emergency, but it also has sent the state into chaos over schools being closed. A lot of schools are closed in New Jersey right now, being clean. College kids are sent home and not coming back this year. Businesses are sending their employees home as a precautionary measure. And so this will all impact New Jersey Transit. So I want to thank you for your response, because I know we have our employees out in the field and they're the first line, and they are doing their job as New Jersey Transit as well. Well, that's what they do. People do their job. I also wanted to comment on the executive director, because when you came, Kevin, that they didn't believe that you would do anything either, and yet you did the PCC cars, you did positive train control. You are here tonight with a response to the legislature with a budget of $2.5 billion, which does have all of the key elements in it. It has a strategic plan, it has measurements in it, it has employees, it has personnel items. And so I think a lot of things go on at public meetings, and you have a lot to encapsulate in an hour or two meeting. But I think when you look at the agenda, which is put together, you will see that you do the business of the state of New Jersey. You have kept your promises. New Jersey Transit's executive team has risen to the occasion and is keeping their promises. Everybody can do better. We all know that. But you have kept, you're 2 years in, and you have kept your promises, and you're making progress. I'd like to draw attention to two issues. One is there's an item here tonight to actually get a new bus garage in Ridgefield Park, which will service 500 buses. Now, that is the business of New Jersey Transit, the business of, you have a crumbling infrastructure. You're down in Washington fighting for infrastructure funds. You're in Trenton. I like to thank the Senate President for I think responding to the governor's call and the legislator's call that New Jersey Transit needs more funding if it's going to be able to meet its commitments. So I did want to say, though, that the rising trend in the environmental community and in the advocate community is the sustainability issues are coming up over and over and really at every meeting, and the advisory board's just been getting involved in that. We were actually quite pleased to find out how much New Jersey Transit is doing, but we didn't really know that. So I will ask through the executive director that the advisory committees, both North and South, get some updates on the sustainability issues so that we can give you more informed recommendations on these issues, because I don't think they're going to go away. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. Board Member Wilton will present the Operations and Customer Service Committee report.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Operations and Customer Service Committee received an update on trends, analysis, and actions for rail, bus, light rail, and access link. The committee also received an update on the cost of service. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Marocco will present the Administration Committee report.
Thank you. The Administration Committee received a financial update. This included an update on ridership and revenue, cost of service key performance indicators, major balance sheet items, attrition and hires, and real estate and economic development highlights. The committee also received updates from Human Resources and Equal Opportunity and Affirmative Action. That concludes my report.
Thank you. And Board Member Fulton will present the Capital Planning Policy and Privatization Committee report.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Capital Planning Policy and Privatization Committee discussed the board items for the bus stock program, purchase of 25 articulated buses, and the consulting services for system-wide upgrade railroad culvert inventory and inspections. That concludes my report.
Thank you. At this time, Kevin, will you present the action items?
Certainly, I'd like to introduce Eric DeLeo, Senior Vice President, Capital Programs, to present Board Item 2003-12 regarding 25 articulated buses.
Thank you, President Corbett. We are recommending approval of item number 2003-12, bus stock program, purchase of 25 articulated buses. The Federal Transit Administration announced in May 2019 the availability of $423 million of funds under the Bus and Bus Facilities Program grant for buses, facilities, and equipment. And in response, New Jersey Transit submitted an application in June 2019. In November of last year, we were awarded the largest grant in the amount of $17,275,000 for the purchase of up to 25 60-foot articulated buses. The purchase of these articulated buses will allow New Jersey Transit to expand capacity and improve operating efficiency by replacing 40-foot buses with 60-foot buses at garages experiencing ridership growth. An authorization is requested to exercise an option in contract number 18-032 with New Flyer of America for 25 additional 60-foot articulated buses, including capital spare parts, at a cost not to exceed $19,602,000 plus 5% contingencies and subject to the availability of funds. NJ Transit has proposed to utilize these additional buses on routes with heavy ridership, including the number 123, Jersey City, Union City, number 126, Hoboken, number 128, North Bergen and Boulevard East, number 156, Englewood Cliffs, Fort Lee, the number 158, Fort Lee, Edgewater, and the number 159, Fort Lee. We ask your approval of item 2003-12.
May I have a motion to approve Board Item 2003-12? I'm sorry, who made the motion? Second? Second. Is there any discussion on the matter? Eric, I have one question. Will 60-foot buses fit in the new northern bus garage that's on the agenda later on?
We will work on it to make it so.
Thank you. Joyce, would you take roll?
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Ajmani? Yes. Board Member Doshi? Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Marocco?
Yes.
Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez Cacchetti?
Yes.
Motion carried. For the next item, we do have a board member recusal. Board Member Adams is recused from the next item, 2003-13, and we will mute the telephone at this time.
All right, now I'll ask Ray Kenny, Senior Vice President and General Manager of Rail Operations, to present Board Item 2003-13 regarding culverts.
Good evening, members of the board. We are recommending approval of item number 2003-13, consulting services for system-wide undergrade railroad culvert inventory and inspections. Authorization is requested to enter into a contract with KS Engineers of Newark, New Jersey to perform a first cycle inventory and inspection of approximately 742 undergrade culverts in an amount not to exceed $1,415,624 plus 5% for contingencies, subject to the availability of funds. We ask for your approval of item number 2003-13.
May I have a motion to approve? May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say that, these are the kinds of initiatives that I believe are foundational to how we manage our capital program. And, on their face, they may not seem significant, but it's building that base of inventory and condition assessment that enables us to really make the tough decisions as it relates to capital allocations. And so I, for one, would say I hope to see many more of these kinds of initiatives.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Having a motion and a second, Joyce, would you take roll?
Roll call vote. Again, for the record, Board Member Adams is recused. Board Member Ajmani?
Yes.
Board Member Doshi? Yes. Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Marocco?
Yes.
Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez-Cachetti?
Yes.
Motion carried. We will unmute the telephone so Board Member Adams can rejoin the meeting.
Great. I'd now like to introduce Bill Vaquera, Senior Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and Treasurer, to present Board Item 2003-14 regarding Health and Welfare Benefits Program. Bill?
Thank you. We are recommending approval of Item 2003-14, Selection of Consultant for Health and Welfare Benefits. Authorization is requested to enter into contract with Korn Ferry for health and welfare programs consulting services. This contract will provide consulting services for the health care benefits provided to active and retired New Jersey Transit employees and their eligible dependents beginning July 1st, 2020, for a period of 3 years with 2 one-year renewal options, with administrative fees not to exceed $3,402,261, plus 5% for contingencies based on the scope of services and subject to the availability of funds. We ask for approval of Item 2003-14.
May I have a motion to approve? May I have a second? Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, Joyce, please take roll.
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Ajmani?
Yes.
Board Member Doshi?
Yes.
Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Marocco?
Yes.
Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez-Cachetti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Now I'd like Bill to continue on with Item 2003-15, the annual budget proposal transmittal.
Thank you. We are recommending of approval of Item 2003-15, Annual Budget Proposal Transmittal. This presentation reflects Exhibit A of Item 2003-15, our Annual Budget Proposal Transmittal. As required by statute, the transmittal must be approved by the Board prior to the ultimate submission to the New Jersey DOT Commissioner, President of the Senate, Speaker of the General Assembly, and other legislative committees. The first slide is an outlook of our operating budget, both resources and expenses. It includes actual results for fiscal year 19, the latest projections for fiscal year 20, our fiscal year 21 proposed budget based on the recent governor's budget recommendation, and the preliminary estimate for needs, both mandatory and discretionary, in fiscal year 22. A few things I'd like to point out. First, you'll notice a significant jump in fare box revenue in fiscal year 20 from fiscal year 19. Note that in fiscal year 19, we provided rail customers with over $15 million in temporary fare reductions in lieu of service disruptions. 3-month, 10% system-wide discount accounted for largely for the increase you see from fiscal year 19 to fiscal year 20. Also in fiscal year 19, we saw $25 million in one-time, non-recurring commercial revenue. This included $11 million for the closing of a transit-oriented development transaction in Somerville and over $14 million in prior year prescription rebates. These one-time revenues allowed us to reduce our planned capital transfer by $15 million, putting those funds back into the Transportation Trust Fund in support of critical IT capital projects. And also, thanks to the additional support from the state, we've seen a significant increase in the state operating subsidy, growing from $307.5 million in fiscal year 19 to nearly $590 million in the proposed fiscal year 21 budget. Our current fiscal year 20 projections estimate $5.7 million in net income by the end of the fiscal year. We continue to closely monitor our revenues and our costs, and especially considering the recent economic impacts resulting from the coronavirus. We are in the midst of assessing and quantifying the current ridership impacts, as well as if the impact continues. The governor's proposed budget for fiscal year 21 includes a total New Jersey Transit operating budget of over $2.5 billion. We'll get to some of the investments in later slides. You'll also notice a preliminary operating budget for fiscal year 22 totaling nearly $2.7 billion. Most notably, you'll see a mandatory need of $212 million, which includes the need to replace $129 million from the expiring Turnpike Authority funding agreement, absent a renewal of that agreement as things stand today. We'll too discuss fiscal year 22 in later slides. This slide provides a graphical look at fiscal year 21's operating budget based on the governor's budget proposal. Still, the largest share of our resources will come from passenger revenues at 39%. Between the state operating subsidy and other state assistance, which is comprised of both Turnpike Authority and Clean Energy Fund support, that makes up another 32% of our operating budget resources. And capital transfers will make up another 18%. On the expense side, the majority of our expenses remain staff costs, labor, and fringe benefits at approximately 61%. Of that, 55% is labor approximately and 45% fringe. Second is our purchase transportation costs at 10%, and then fuel and power, materials, outside service costs, each at approximately 7% of the operating budget. This slide provides another graphical look at fiscal year 21 operating budget, this time by function and including both dollars and FTE. With the funding increase proposed by the governor, we expect to hire an additional 346 staff in fiscal year 21. You'll see that bus and rail are estimated to make up a combined 72% of the operating budget and another 84% of the total New Jersey Transit headcount. Light rail makes up another 11% of the budget with just 2% of the total headcount. That's due to the size of our contracted services under purchase transportation. Take a deeper look at fiscal year 21 operating budget investments, initiatives, and costs. The governor's proposed budget provides us with a total operating budget of $2.533 billion. This reflects budget growth of $141.9 million, or 5.9% over the fiscal year 20 operating budget. It also includes a total headcount of 12,216, which is an increase of 346 full-time equivalent, or 2.9% from fiscal year 20. The proposed fiscal year 21 operating budget would reflect a compound annual growth rate of 4.5% under the Murphy administrations in fiscal year 18. Total state assistance would be just over $800 million, including the subsidy, Turnpike, and Clean Energy, while the general fund subsidy alone would be $589.5 million, an increase of $132 million over the fiscal year 20 operating budget. This growth would support a combination of investments, one being service enhancements that improve the customer experience. This includes additional bus service hours targeting primarily the northern region of the state, interstate markets, with an expansion of weekend, evening interstate service through the Lincoln Tunnel, added hours to alleviate overcrowding along the New York interstate lines, and scheduling improvements along routes statewide in order to improve on-time performance. Also, 4 additional training classes of locomotive engineers, an additional rail terminal staff across New York, Newark, and other stations. This includes TVM agents, platform staff, train dispatchers, and other train operating support staff. We'll also look to enhance safety and enforcement by adding more rail infrastructure, building and bridge mechanics to help maintain the aging transit system, and rail transportation staff to improve supervision of train crews. We will also expand our police force and ranks throughout the system. This includes additional coverage throughout New Jersey and New York Penn Station. We'll look to begin additional strategic investments, including the launch of a battery electric bus program and other initiatives that will guide the strategic direction of the corporation as part of the 10-year strategic plan. This includes the establishment of a dedicated strategic planning and policy group, as well as dedicated unit to seek and execute transit-oriented development opportunities. We'll also look to provide market rate compensation adjustments for non-agreement staff in order to better align pay with that of regional peers. And we also need to cover our mandatory cost increases, largely agreement labor contracts. This includes contractual escalations in purchase transportation, IT contracts, and other outside services, such as payments to Amtrak for NEC usage. In addition, we'll support the placement of 25 new and additional articulated buses into service, which are being purchased through a recently awarded competitive federal grant. And then in addition to costs, we've also worked to identify offsets and other solutions in our fiscal year 21 budget, and these include health benefit reform savings and savings in several non-recurring contracts and other renewal of other negotiated contracts. And once again, we anticipate no fare increase in fiscal year 21. A brief look at fiscal year 22 preliminarily. This includes a near $2.7 billion operating budget, which would equate to budget growth of $153 million or 6% over fiscal year 21. It would also reflect a 4.9% compound annual growth rate under the Murphy administration's first term. The estimated funding need is $272 million, of which, as I mentioned earlier, $212 million is mandatory, but of that, $129 million reflects the replacement of the expiration of the Turnpike Authority funding of $129 million. The remaining $83 million would support usual mandatory cost increases. We'll also continue to execute our strategic plan, including further advancement of the battery electric bus program in support of the state's clean energy goals, route redesigns and simplification, and enhanced support of our current service and maintenance programs for the fleet in order to minimize service disruptions. And lastly, we will be back once the final budget is signed by the governor and after negotiation with the legislature to present a formal fiscal year 21 budget. And with that, I ask for board approval of item 2003-15 to transmit Exhibits A and B to the Commissioner of Transportation, to the President of the Senate, Speaker of the General Assembly, and the Assembly Transportation Independent Authorities Committee, and the Senate Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Bill. May I have a motion to approve Board Item 2003-15?
I'll move it.
Second? May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment to.
Put your mic on.
I wanted to thank Bill and his team and the rest of the staff for all the hard work they put into this. As a board member, I found it to be very digestible. There's a tremendous amount of data that you were able to convey that I could easily understand. So thank you and all the departments that worked on it. I know it wasn't confined to financial department. And I think it's important to also know for the board that this is just the process that we're kicking off that's going to make us compliant with the reform law. The 11 items will go down to the legislator. They can start the process over there, and then it gets to come back to us. I think it's important for everyone to understand that if that was here. So.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure the team does as well. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir.
This is good work, and it's complicated. And I recognize that it takes a lot to pull a budget like this together. And there's a process, and there's not really a lot of time. So it's important that we can get it started with the understanding that we have an opportunity to comment upon it as we move along. But when you look at the bottom line and you see that we have increases in the amount of money that we have to take care of the business of New Jersey Transit, that's assuring. Having the opportunity to point out the enhancements that are going to come to our customers in the form of incremental buses, articulated buses, can eliminate things like standing and create more efficiency. We're moving in the right direction. I see FTE increases that are also inserted into this budget. That's important. We're working on technology programs such as electrification of bus systems and program. These things are important. We're moving in the right direction. So I'm happy to see those kinds of things in the preliminary budget, and I look forward to discussing and working with my colleagues and the administration and the governor as we work to finalize a budget that's not just going to address the issues of today, but the issues of tomorrow. You know, we're looking at a couple of years here, but there's a much grander scheme, and importantly, this budget talks specifically to the strategic planning process, and where we want to end up is make sure that we're aligning our budgeting process with where our strategic targets and goals are. So I thank you and your team for what I consider to be very good work.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you on that as well. Thank you.
Yes, please. You know what?
Is it on?
It's on, but you can't vote on this, so
I understand that. I'd just like to make a very brief comment, if I may.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I want to add my thanks to Bill and his staff for the hard and complex work that they were engaged in putting this budget together. And I want to associate myself with the remarks of my colleague, Board Member Fulton. We are moving in the right direction. A lot of progress is underway. I was very pleased to see the increase of the $132 million in the operating subsidy, which represents a 48% increase in that figure. Those funds are certainly badly needed. However, I have to say that I was greatly dismayed that we are going to have a continuation of this capital to operating transfer that we've had for a number of years, which has amounted to billions of dollars. The proposed budget calls for a shifting of $460 million from the capital accounts to operating, and this is through fiscal '22. I think we all are in agreement that this practice of cannibalizing the capital budget has contributed greatly to the deterioration of the service of New Jersey Transit in recent years. At the same time, this year we're borrowing $500 million to invest in new vehicles and infrastructure. This just doesn't make sense to me. The governor's own consultant in the audit report, the North Highland report, called this practice unsustainable and one that would lead the organization into what it called a spiral of decline. And so I just want to say, I believe these capital to operating transfers can't end soon enough, and I hope that they end this year. It is my hope that in the coming weeks, the governor and the legislative leadership will sit down and talk about finding once and for all a stable, dependable, dedicated source of revenues that we can rely on so that we don't have to engage in these transfers. And I'm very confident that we are going to get there and that these funds are going to provide the real resources that we need to restore services to the levels that our customers expect. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your comments, Board Member Gordon, but I'll take exception to one. This staff has worked extraordinarily hard to find ways in the last 2 years to reduce the capital to operating transfer. And it may be perhaps one of your last years in the legislature that the legislature itself misappropriated $50 million to capital as opposed to putting it in operating where it belonged, that caused the operating transfer to go up. In addition, you served in a legislature that allowed a governor to continue to reduce a general fund contribution, which exacerbated that problem. So with all due respect, we're going to sit on this board and we're going to work very hard to work together as opposed to be critical. I think the fact that they were able to continue to reduce the transfer and put money back in this year, even if $15 million doesn't seem like a lot, it certainly is a start. And so from this dais, or at least from me, and I think from some of my other board members, we will recognize the hard work over only 2 years where we have had capital to operating transfers for perhaps more than 10. So with that, I'm going to take a vote, Joyce.
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Rajmani? Yes. Board Member Doshi? Yes. Board Member Fulton? Yes. Board Member Morocco? Yes. Board Member Wilton? Yes. Chair Gutierrez Scacchetti. Motion carried.
I'd now like to introduce the last item for action for this evening. That Bill will introduce, item 2003-16 regarding property acquisition for construction of a new northern bus garage. And I would remind Michael Gilcoin, the Senior Vice President of Surface Transportation, that he's not allowed to dance, clap, or any other activity until after the vote is taken. Bill?
Thank you. I want to see the dance. We are recommending approval of item 2003-16, property acquisition in Richfield Park for the construction of a new bus garage. Authorization is requested to offer and make compensatory payments to property owners that hold title to property from which fee rights are needed for the northern bus garage project in accordance with the Eminent Domain Act of 1971. Authorization is also requested to take any and all actions to acquire and fee parcels 1 through 4 and other rights necessary for the northern bus garage project in amounts not to exceed payments discussed in executive session, subject to the availability of funds in accordance with the eminent domain law of 1971, including filing complaints and condemnation, recording declarations of taken, and where necessary, depositing compensation with the clerk of the Superior Court, so long as New Jersey Transit attempts to acquire these parcels from the property owners through bona fide negotiations before commencing condemnation proceedings. We ask for your approval of item 2003-16.
May I have a motion? May I have a second? Any discussion? Yes.
Commissioner, can I just make a
James?
comment?
Yeah, James, just 1 second. Board member Doshi has a comment as well, so let her go, and then we'll have you talk second.
Is it on?
Thank you.
It is.
Okay. I just have something quick. I just wanted to say that, that sustainability is very important to this board and staff. In my limited time here, we have been asking the questions about the environment, and being green is very important. For example, like this garage, we were talking about ways to keep it green. For the buses, we were talking about if we get electric buses, the infrastructure we have to put in place. So I just wanted to say that before we vote on this, that we are keeping the environment in mind. So,
Thank you, and that's an important point. Board member Adams, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner. It's Board Member Greaves here.
Oh, sorry, Ray.
That's okay. I don't know if Mike Kilcoin's dancing, but I sure as hell
Not
am
yet.
dancing right now. Well, I'm going to be, hopefully. But this is just a project that we have been searching for years. I've been on this board for some time, and as a representative of labor and on the bus side, I can't tell you how much that this is needed, and that the members of the ATU down at Howell, Oradell Bus Garage, have been working in some pretty rough conditions over the years with flooding issues and everything in that garage. And, you know, not only are our commuters going to be happy and well served, but the employees of Oradell Garage and the employees of New Jersey Transit are going to be well served, hopefully, with the passage of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray, and I think it's important to point out you're working at about 28% over capacity at Oradell today, which is really not good working conditions. But to Board Member Doshi's point, I think New Jersey will be happy because this will be a facility that begins the process of rolling out an electric bus fleet. So I give the team a lot of credit. They've located a good piece of property that at the moment is not being used and is up for sale, and I think we'll wind up with a good result from the purchase of the property and the construction of the garage. And with that, we'll take a vote.
Roll call vote. Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Ajmani?
Yes.
Board Member Doshi? Yes. Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Morocco? Yes. Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez Scacchetti?
Yes.
Motion carried.
And I would just note for the record that board item 2003-18 is being deferred.
Thank you, Kevin. So in a recognition of our new process, we will be adjourning to executive session, but we want you to know that we have to return to close the meeting, but there will be no voting action taken after executive session. Any matter raised in executive session after this, after we go back into the conference room, will be voted on at our next meeting. So I need a motion to enter into executive session to discuss personnel matters, contract negotiations, the status of pending and anticipated litigation, and matters falling in with the attorney-client privilege, including but not limited to New Jersey Transit Portal North Bridge Project, Parcel 118, Jana Corporation acquisition, and Metal Green Recycling Industries relocation. May I have a motion? May I have a second? Is there any discussion? Joyce, please take a roll call vote.
Roll call vote, Board Member Adams?
Yes.
Board Member Ajmani? Yes. Board Member Doshi? Board Member Fulton?
Yes.
Board Member Morocco? Yes. Board Member Wilton?
Yes.
Chair Gutierrez Gacchetti?
Yes.
Motion carries.